All right. It's extremely intimidating to be up here because I've never written a book, I've never run for political office, much less one political office. And for the last 20 years, I consider it a good day when I go home and I haven't burned myself or cut myself. So, a little bit intimidating. A little brief history of me. I went to college and decided that I was going to major in English literature. You can laugh at that. And told my parents halfway through college that I was going to get a degree in English literature. But when I graduated college, I was going to go off and cook. Because growing up in my household with my parents and my family, going to college and getting a degree was not optional, it was mandatory. So I was going to check the box. I got a degree in English literature. And then I was going to go off and cook. And my dad, of all people, told me, why don't you just go to culinary school? And if you know anything about my father, my incredibly conservative father, you would know that that was about the equivalent of him telling me, son, why don't you take your guitar in a band and just hit the road? Good luck to you, rock and roll. So I went to culinary school and I had one goal in mind, and that was to own my own restaurant and be chef of that restaurant. And in 2007, I had the opportunity. I sold my house, took all the equity out of it, took out a loan. I bought into a restaurant in Uptown here in Dallas. 2007, the economy tanked. Restaurants were closing left and right. And I went from this moment of saying I hit my goal to thinking, what the hell were you thinking? Horrible life decision. I'm proud to tell you that in that first year of ownership, I grew the business 38%, and D Magazine here in Dallas nominated me for Best Up-and-Coming Chef. And then I thought, you smart SOB. You are a risk-taking genius. It was also right at the one-year anniversary of ownership that I got volunteered to go teach 8 young men inside one of the Dallas County juvenile detention facilities how to make ice cream for an ice cream competition here at the Dallas Farmers Market. The first item to note of that is the moment I met them, I realized immediately that I had stereotyped them without having ever met them. The way they walk, the way they talk, hood, thug, gangsta. I knew I was wrong immediately. Because immediately all 8 of these young men looked me in the eye and all 8 of them called me sir. Now, I've been cooking for 20 years. I've been called a lot of names in a lot of languages in a lot of kitchens. Not one language was it ever sir. As a matter of fact, I was lucky if it was chef without an adjective before it. Or telling me somewhere I could go after they said chef. These kids were so eager to learn, they were so enthusiastic to do something that they could be proud of. Never mind the fact that for all 8 of them, raspberry was a flavor of candy. They had never seen or tasted a fresh raspberry. You can imagine how blown away their minds were when I forced them to try fresh tarragon. They thought I was having them eat grass. And I was like, but it tastes like licorice, come on. They made ice cream, and 2 days later, the county bussed them down to the farmer's market, and these 8 kids stood so proud standing alongside college culinary students, competing against them. And at the end of the competition, one of the young men won the whole thing. He beat all the college students and everybody, and when he did, he came running up to me, knees bent, arms cocked, screaming at the top of his lungs, "Sir, I just love to cook!" And I did the only thing that I could think of. I bent my knees, cocked my arms, got right in his face and screamed back, "Sir, me too!" And he said, "I just love to make food and give it to people and put a smile on their face." And I remember immediately thinking, how dare you stereotype this sweet kid? He could have said, "I want to make food and make money and be rich." He could have said, "I want to make food and make money and help my mom pay the electric bill." But he said, "I love to make food and give it to people and put a smile on their face." And it reminded me of my passion for cooking. My passion for cooking came from going to Sunday suppers every single Sunday at my grandparents' house. My aunts, uncles, cousins, all of us breaking bread together, and food had always meant a lot more to me than just eating. It was about family, it was about camaraderie, it was about that association. And then he said to me, "When I get out, I'm gonna get a job in a restaurant." And at that moment I thought, if my mom could hear this now, she would know all the sins of my past have been forgiven, and I'm a decent human being. And then he said, "Sir, where do you think I should cook? Wendy's or Chili's?" And I said, "Sir, whoever hires you first, and then whoever pays you the most money second, but whoever hires you first." And I drove home that day and I realized several things. Number one of which was I was never gonna see this kid again. He was under custody of the Dallas County Juvenile Department, which meant they're not gonna give personal information for a child to a complete stranger. Number two is I knew that when he got out of jail, he's gonna go right back to the same house, the same street, the same neighborhood, the same community, the same school, the same gangs, the same drugs, the same poverty, the same every single thing that had led him directly on a path to detention. Number three, the system's rigged. The odds of him ever making it to a Wendy's or Chili's, nilch. And I thought, it's not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair because the reason he can't do it are all based on decisions that were made for him before he was ever born. The color of his skin, the family he was born to, the socioeconomic class he was born to, the part of town he was born to, the school district he was born into. All of those choices were made for him without any of his input. And then I thought reflectively, but the same thing happened to me. I enjoy a lot of privilege because of those same things on the other side. And I thought it's just not fair. And somebody needs to do something. And I thought, why are you complaining about everybody else doing something? Either you do something or be quiet. And thus the idea for Cafe Momentum was born. Cafe Momentum, as Dan mentioned, is currently ranked as the third best restaurant in Dallas. Ignore number 1 and 2. But it's also a 12-month paid post-release internship for young men and young ladies exiting Dallas County juvenile detention facilities. You guys can't clap. You can't clap because I have to get through all this and I have a tendency to ramble. And I'll go over time and then Julie will be mad and then she'll cancel the dinner tonight. We won't get paid. See, I told you, tendency to ramble. All right, so over the course of 12 months, the kids worked their way through every single station in the restaurant. So in no particular order, they are a dishwasher, a prep cook, a line cook, a busser, a server, a host or hostess. And while they're working their way through those stations, they're learning and practicing newly learned life skills and social skills, things like showing up for work on time, things like organization, time management, looking someone in the eye when you speak to them, disagreeing appropriately. While they're going through those stations, they're also learning what their strengths and interests are, what they're good at, what they don't like doing. They're also learning how to be a team player, how they're accountable to the success of others. If you wash dishes and you're not doing your job, it can affect the waiters, it can affect the cooks. But in addition, we do focus on building an ecosystem of support around them. Why is that important? Since the restaurant opened, we've worked with 300 kids. 62% of them are homeless. If you're 15 or 16 years old and you're homeless, that typically also means you've been abandoned. So we have to create a baseline of stability and continue to build from there. So we have multiple housing partners. We have a partnership with Parkland Hospital, which is the county hospital here in Dallas, so that every single one of our kids not only has access to free medical care, they have access to an actual primary care physician. We're helping them get government-issued IDs, bank accounts. Once we create that stability, we go on to more intermediate things, financial literacy training, parenting classes, so that as they're going through their program, we're now beginning to build this foundation for them. And as they get to the end of our program, they interview for a position with one of our employment partners that does focus on their strengths and interests, and they begin an externship and slowly transition themselves out of our organization. Now, I think all of this sounds amazing, very biased, but I love it. But when I first started going around telling people, hey, I want to open up a nonprofit restaurant, first, of course, everybody would say, aren't all restaurants nonprofit? And I had to say, yes, but I'm honest. Then they would say things like, what are you going to do when those kids stab each other in the kitchen? Those kids don't want to work. They just want to check. Those kids have never been to a nice restaurant. They can't even pronounce the dishes on your menu. And I realized that there are some even bigger and more pervasive stereotypes about these kids. So in 2011, we launched a series of monthly pop-up dinners, and the idea was very simple. Go into one of the top restaurants in Dallas on a Sunday night when they're closed, sell tickets to a private dinner, have the chef write a 4-course menu, and then his or her staff to not only execute the food in the kitchen, but serve it to the level and quality of service of that restaurant. We're 8 kids that we would bus in from one of the Dallas County juvenile detention facilities. The first dinner, the goal was to get 50 people to pay $50. Had no faith that anyone would show up, so much so that I had 4 people helping me organize the dinner, and I challenged them and said, each one of us has to sell 10 tickets to this dinner so we can guarantee that there will be 50 people there, and if you don't sell 10 tickets, you got to pay $50 for each ticket you didn't sell. Yeah. See, what they also didn't know is that I had devised a masterful plan to call my mom and have her guilt the ladies in her Bible study class and to buy my 10 tickets so I wouldn't be out $500. But we didn't have to do that because myself and another gentleman posted a link announcing the dinner and a link to PayPal to buy tickets, and within 24 hours before we could turn the PayPal off, we had sold 68 seats. And that first dinner, 68 people showed up, and 68 people shook my hand or gave me a hug when they left, and they said, you know, this could be my son. And I said, exactly. By December of 2011, we doubled the price from $50 to $100. We also stopped making it BYOB. And the dinner sold out in about 15 minutes. And by spring of 2012, our dinners were selling out in 15 seconds. In the summer of 2012, I sat down with my business partner. She knew it was coming. And I said, I got to go. I said, it's one thing to tell the kids that you believe in them. Everybody tells them that. And I said, but I need to prove it. And I need to show them that I'm willing to bet my career on them. So I sold out of my restaurant effective September 1st, 2012, and became executive director and executive chef of a restaurant and nonprofit that didn't even exist. The restaurant did open January 29th, 2015. And since then, we've now worked with over 300 kids. Since the restaurant opened, 172 in the pop-up dinners, about 500 total. Of those 500 kids, statistically speaking, 48.3% of them should have gone back to jail within 12 months. That's the recidivism rate for juvenile offenders in the state of Texas. And if they go back to jail a second time, again, 50-50 proposition, then 99% of the time, they're going to end up spending the rest of their life going in and out, in and out, in and out. It cost us as taxpayers in Texas $127,000 to lock a kid up once, with a 50-50 shot that we'll pay another $127,000 to lock them up a second time, with a guaranteed shot that will pay between $1.7 and $2.3 million over the course of their life, continuing to lock them up over and over again. I say all that to tell you all something very, very important. There's some guy named Mike Rawlings that's about to come up here and speak. Mayor. Yeah. Here's the deal with Mayor Rawlings is, and he knows this, but if you guys want to shout it at him when he gets up here, feel free, he loves it. And that is that of the 500 kids that we've worked with, only 15.2% have ever gone back to jail at all. So, hold on. That means Mike Rawlings owes me a check for $19.8 million. Now we can clap. I still haven't seen the check, but I figure if the whole room gives them hell about it, you never know. But our mission statement at Cafe Momentum doesn't say to keep kids out of jail. It specifically states to help them achieve their full potential. And keeping somebody out of jail and helping them achieve their full potential is a pretty wide gap. So I want to tell you about one of our young men that graduated our program. As a matter of fact, he was part of the very first graduating class in April of 2016. His name is Abba Sai. Abba Sai is a second-generation Mexican immigrant, meaning his parents crossed the border illegally, got jobs, illegal immigrants, got married, started a family, and they got divorced. It meant that Abba Sai went from living in a pretty bad neighborhood to living in a real bad neighborhood. It meant that he went from living in poverty to higher poverty. It meant that he didn't want to ask his mom for things that she would complain his dad should provide. He didn't want to ask his dad for things that he would complain his mom should provide. So he turned to the streets to find the resources, money, to get the things that he needed to survive. Things like shoes, food for he and his little brother, basic necessities. And it got him in trouble And he went to jail and he went through our program. And upon graduating our program, two things happened. He was still in high school, but a couple that's actually sitting right there offered to pay for him to go to college. And he went and worked with one of our employment partners, a large hotel here in Dallas, and within 3 months, he was promoted from busboy to barback, and at 17 years old, Abasai was making between $700 and $1,000 a week with full health benefits, paid vacation, and a 401k. Which, comparatively, when I was 17, I worked at a record store, made $50, spent $45 on music, $5 on gas, and hoped my parents would feed me, and that life was pretty good. In January of last year, Abasai walked across stage as the first ever high school graduate of his family, and today is in his second semester at Richland College here in Dallas, where he plans on transferring to a 4-year university and majoring in mechanical engineering. So what that tells us is the story is no longer about him. It's about his kids, their kids, their kids. It tells us that the cycle is broken, the cycle of incarceration, the cycle of poverty, and that excites us so much because it's no longer about keeping him out of jail. It's about watching he and future generations of his family succeed. It excites us so much that we actually did a study. We'll call it the Abasai study. And we looked at, if we work with about 100 kids a year, which, by the way, we're at about 125 now, but if we work with about 100 kids a year, what does that look like across 5 generations? What does that mean? So when you actually look at lives, working with 100 kids a year affects over 2,500 lives across 5 generations. Then, when you look at that financial impact, is Mayor Rawlings here yet? It's going to be a bigger check. And you actually take not just the money that you save by breaking the incarceration cycle of that initial generation, but you actually add to it the money that then begins to pour back into the community because they're working, they're building their way out of poverty, they're paying in, they're buying in. That total is over $389 million, which is a significantly bigger check. But the way I look at it is that's 389 more Cafe Momentums. And my people ask me all the time, are you going to scale? Are you going to scale? And the answer is yes. I arrogantly told a reporter one time that my goal was to open more Cafe Momentums than Starbucks. Yeah. Well, you clap, sir, but that's before I realized there were 27,000 Starbucks. Fun fact, in China, they open a new Starbucks every 15.8 hours. So I've since scaled that down to a local coffee franchise. So we'll get number 2 open, and then 3. But it is important. It's important because I said we work with 100 kids a year. There are 6,500 kids that enter the Dallas County juvenile system every single year, and 65,000 across the state of Texas. That's 65,000 kids that just need the opportunity to make ice cream and be told they can do it. So I'm going to leave you with thanking you all for allowing me to speak, and also who is coming to the dinner tonight. So for those of you that are coming to the dinner, I want to personally say thank you, because what you're doing by you showing up, it makes what we do work. I'm dealing with a population of children that the juvenile justice industry term to describe as throwaway. It's children that have been discarded since the day they're born. And by you guys showing up tonight and eating an incredibly wonderful, best food you've ever had in your entire life, even Yelp agrees. Just kidding. You're doing something far more important. You're taking a child who's been told they're a throwaway and has brandished with a scarlet letter on their chest that says it their entire life, and you're telling them they matter. And you're telling them that you believe in them and that they're important. And that allows these kids to begin to look at themselves no longer as just a citizen of their neighborhood, but they look at themselves as a citizen of this city and of this country. And that's a very empowering feeling. So thank you all very much for letting me intrude on your time, and thank you to the people that will be coming to the restaurant tonight. Thank you.